What if I told you that the Eiffel Tower was sold, not once, but twice, to the same buyer, by the same man? Paris, 1925. An elegant count summons the city's top businessmen for an ultra-secret meeting at the Hotel Crillon, the most luxurious one of its time. What happened in those gilded rooms would forever change the way we see manipulation, greed, and the power of a good story. But our story doesn't begin in Paris. It begins in 1890, in Hostany, a small town in Bohemia, now part of the Czech Republic. There, among the green fields of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, Robert V. Miller was born, a name far too common for someone who would become extraordinary. Dresden, Germany, early 20th century. Young Robert walks through the city's medieval streets, absorbing every accent, every inflection of voice. He wasn't just learning languages, he was collecting identities. German, French, English, Italian, Hungarian. 5 languages that would become 5 different personalities. It was in Dresden that Robert died, and Victor Lustig was born. Not literally, of course, but symbolically. The ordinary boy transformed into what would become known as the greatest con artist of the 20th century. With invented aristocratic titles and natural charm, Victor discovered that Europe was hungry for charming nobles. Vienna, Austria. The card tables of the city's most elegant casinos became Victor's university. He watched, studied, learned. Not just the cards, but the people. How they reacted under pressure, how greed clouded judgment, how the desire to belong to the elite made them vulnerable. And then came 1914. World War I turned Europe into a battlefield. But for Victor Lustig, it represented a unique opportunity. Unable to cross the Atlantic due to the conflict, he perfected a scam that would become his trademark. Imagine an apparently scientific device, full of gears and blinking lights, that promised to duplicate money. Victor sold these machines to wealthy passengers on transatlantic ships, demonstrating how they produced authentic bills after a few hours of processing. The genius part? Most victims never reported the scam out of sheer embarrassment. Paris, 1889. Did you know the Eiffel Tower was built to be temporary? Gustave Eiffel erected his iron monstrosity for the World's Fair, and the original contract called for its demolition in just 20 years. 1925, Paris. France was trying to rise from the ashes of the Great War. The Eiffel Tower, now 36 years old, had become a financial burden. Its 7,000 tons of iron required constant and extremely expensive maintenance. Rumors circulated throughout the city. The government was considering dismantling it to cut costs. It was in this climate of uncertainty and renewal that Victor Lustig arrived in the city. He walked along the Avenue des Champs-Élysées, observing the tower rising majestically in the distance, when he had a brilliant idea. If everyone believed it would be demolished, why not sell it? But Victor wasn't just any con artist. He was an artist of manipulation. He settled into the Hotel Crillon at Place de la Concorde, one of Paris's most prestigious addresses. He had fake letterheads made from the Ministère des Postes et Télégraphes, the ministry responsible for mail and telegraphs, which at the time administered the tower. The transformation was complete. Victor Lustig had become the deputy director in charge of a top-secret mission to sell the right to dismantle the Eiffel Tower to the highest bidder. But how to convince Paris's most experienced businessmen that a stranger had the authority to sell the symbol of France? The perfect con isn't about deceiving someone. It's about making the person deceive themselves. Victor Lustig understood this decades before modern psychologists discovered cognitive biases. First, artificial scarcity. Victor insisted that only one businessman would be chosen, creating urgency and competitiveness. Second, social validation. Other reputable businessmen were interested, so the opportunity must be legitimate. Third, confirmation bias. Poisson, the buyer, wanted so badly to believe that he ignored all the warning signs. The 25th of May, 1925. Still in Paris, Poisson hands over 1.2 million francs for the right to dismantle the Eiffel Tower, plus a 70,000 franc bribe. Victor counts the money, smiles, and disappears. Literally. The next day, he boards the first train to Vienna, leaving behind only a confused businessman and a city that never knew its symbol had been sold. And Poisson? Too ashamed to admit he'd been duped, he never reported the crime. The perfect con leaves no victims willing to talk. 6 months later, Victor Lustig commits the perfect crime for the second time. Vienna had been good to him, luxury life, expensive casinos, the feeling of impunity. But Paris called him back. After all, if it worked once, why not try again? Autumn 1925, Paris. Victor returns with a new identity, new documents, the same story. After all, no newspaper had reported the first con. The Eiffel Tower was still there, apparently up for sale to anyone with enough money. This time, he was even more careful in selecting his victims. New businessmen, same luxurious room, same convincing presentation. His previous experience had perfected his method. Every gesture, every word, every pause calculated for maximum psychological impact. But luck has its limits. The second group of businessmen included someone less naive, more suspicious. When inconsistencies in the documentation began to appear, when the verifications didn't match, the businessman alerted the police. The police chase began, but Victor Lustig was already 3 steps ahead. He left Paris in a hurry, taking with him only one suitcase and the certainty that he would never return. The Eiffel Tower would remain standing, but Victor had proved his point. Anything can be sold to the right person at the right time, even if you don't own it. Before we start this part, please subscribe to the channel and click the like button. It motivates me and helps me keep making videos like this one. Turn on the notification bell so you'll be alerted about the next video I'll release as soon as possible. Now, let's get back to what we were talking about. 1926, New York. The port bustles with immigrants chasing the American dream. Among them, an elegant count disembarks with flawless documents and fascinating stories about European nobility. Who could he be? 1920 seconds. America was perfect territory for someone like Victor. Prohibition had created a parallel economy of smuggling and corruption. New millionaires sprang from Wall Street speculation, hungry for status and exclusive opportunities. It was a paradise for sophisticated con artists. Chicago, Illinois. The city dominated by Al Capone would become the stage for Victor's boldest con. It wasn't enough to fool ordinary businessmen. He wanted to test his skills against the king of American organized crime. The meeting took place in one of Capone's controlled clubs. Victor introduced himself as a European investor with connections in the black market for liquor. He proposed a deal, a $50,000 initial investment to establish a new smuggling route between Canada and Chicago. Capone, impressed by Victor's sophistication and knowledge, handed over the money. For 2 months, Victor maintained the charade, presenting detailed reports on fictitious negotiations and imaginary bureaucratic issues. Then came the masterstroke. Victor returned all the money to Capone, claiming that circumstances had made the deal impossible. "I'd rather return your investment than compromise our future partnership," he said solemnly. The artificial honesty worked perfectly. Capone, impressed by Victor's integrity, gave him $1,000 as a reward for his honesty. Victor had literally conned Al Capone by making him believe he wasn't being conned. But Victor Lustig wasn't satisfied with isolated scams. He wanted to build a criminal empire. In 1929, he partnered with William Watts, a brilliant chemist specialized in counterfeiting money. The duo set up operations in New York, producing counterfeit dollars of exceptional quality. The bills were so perfect, they fooled even government experts. Victor used up to 45 different names, maintaining separate identities for each operation. For 5 years, he moved through America's high criminal society. Smugglers, mobsters, corrupt politicians, all knew and respected the mysterious European count who always had the best opportunities and never left a trace. His operations stretched from New York to San Francisco, from Chicago to Miami. A complex network of complicity that moved millions of fake dollars across the country. Victor had become not just a criminal, but a businessman of crime. But every kingdom meets its end. 1935 marks the beginning of the end for Victor Lustig. After 38 arrests without a single conviction, a record that showed both his skill and the corruption of the time, federal agents finally gathered enough evidence. The investigation was led by special agents who had studied his methods for years. They understood that to catch Victor, they had to think like him: anticipation, patience, and attention to the most subtle details. The arrest took place in New York. During a routine operation Victor thought was safe. Irony of fate, the man who had deceived hundreds was caught by a simple, almost trivial trap. But even in custody, Victor remained true to his nature. During transport to court, he managed to make a rope from bedsheets and escape through the courtroom bathroom window. The escape lasted only a few hours, but it was enough to feed his legend. Recaptured, he was sentenced to 20 years in prison for counterfeiting and escape. The court that tried him was only a few miles from where he had conned Al Capone, closing an ironic circle in his criminal career. And we return to the initial question: how does someone sell the Eiffel Tower? The answer isn't in the tower, but in us. Victor Lustig understood that people don't buy products, they buy stories. The Eiffel Tower he sold wasn't made of iron and rivets, but of the opportunity to be part of something greater, to gain access to privileged information, to belong to an exclusive circle. Today, when we look at the Eiffel Tower lit against the Parisian sky, we see a symbol of elegance and romance. Hard to imagine that it was once seen as an expensive, temporary monstrosity. The same structure, completely different perceptions. Victor had capitalized precisely on that shift in perspective. His story reminds us that reality is more malleable than we imagine. Between objective facts and our interpretation of them lies a space where powerful stories can reshape understanding. Victor was a master of that in-between space. He proved that with enough charm, convincing documentation, and a deep understanding of human psychology, it's possible to sell anything to anyone. Even an entire country, represented by its most iconic symbol.